YouTube? Welcome back to another week's episode of Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. I'm Tom, with me is Ryan and Mike, and today we're back into the Clone Wars, Season 3, Episode 3, I believe, titled Clone Cadets.
Episode 1.
Episode 1. All right, guys, how are we?
Good, how are you?
Good.
A little embarrassed right now because I got that wrong, but still good.
It's all right. Good episode to get back into the series from the movie, right? Because that's what we watched last. Again, just want to point out, won't have to do it every time, but Clone Wars chronologically is not how it was released, which is why we're all of a sudden in Season 3, Episode 1. You didn't miss, a bunch of seasons with us. So, if you do plan on doing the rewatch and want to actually follow along chronologically, not how it's actually posted on streaming services. But yeah, so with that, we go back to a familiar planet that we last saw in the Attack of the Clones movie, Kamino, the Cloners planet. So yeah, who wants to take it away?
I mean, I think what stood out to me at the beginning of that scene was the discussion between Lama Su and Shaak Ti about the untimely death of Jango Fett. And it really brought up an interesting and scary scenario for the Republic, because they're talking about they have to stretch Jango Fett's DNA, and it's making it harder to make clones, or to have clones at the highest capability to be good soldiers that were trained by Jango. And now they're starting to see some flaws into how stretching the DNA of him could be an end result of, some defects, we'll call them.
Yeah, kind of like overbreeding, right? For lack of a better term. But that's basically what's happening, or at least that's what they think's happening, right?
Yeah.
So you did mention so we get Shaak Ti. Is this our first intro of this Jedi?
I believe she was
appearance?
in episode 2. I think she was on the Jedi Council, but she probably did make an appearance during the Battle of Geonosis. So, so I think this is the first time we see her in the animated series, and she's overseeing the training for the clone troopers.
Yep, and would definitely at least, maybe it's not the exact first time, but it's at least the most screen time she's had to date, because she's a main part of this episode. And yeah, so you mentioned, Mike, she's overseeing the clone troopers along with mercenary bounty hunters that were hired by the Jedi to help train the clones. And we have Master Chief Brick, who's kind of got like I don't know what type of alien race he is. Never seen his race before. His brain his skull looks like a brain.
Big old brain.
And then we have L Les, who I do believe we've seen his race before. Maybe not chronologically, but he does look like I believe a species that we do see in the Cantina in A New Hope. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
I was about to say.
Oh, I sound right. Yep.
Yeah, he looked familiar. But yeah, and they were obviously two very different methods of their training of these clones. Before I run too far away from it, we're back into the series. So the episodes start off with our kind of recap of the war in the kind of World War II shout out kind of way. But then we get the opening quote, and in this case, the quote was, "Brothers in arms are brothers in life." We can maybe talk about it at the end if it's relevant. It was a fine quote. I think it was, I wrote down some other ones that were said during the episode that I think can lead to better discussion. But we'll go right into the training facility. And first thing I noticed was new armor, right? This training armor, which I thought was very interesting. And at first seeing it, I was like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be relevant. And it really wasn't, but their helmets are glass faced, so you can see their faces. And at this point, all their faces are identical. They've had no form of changes to their face, which might, or we will see that will happen throughout wartime, whether, different hairstyles or tattoos or scars. But yeah, it literally wasn't relevant at all to have them designed that way. So I'm not really sure why they did it. Unless just to remind us that they all are the same or look the same at least. What did you guys think about the initial training and stuff?
I'm just thinking back to how you said they all look the same, and that's completely true. I mean, we go into that facility, we only know them calling two other clone troopers by their nicknames, Echo and Fives.
Mhm.
So there's really not much individuality
Yeah.
or a personality of them at all. It's just they're always supposed to be reminded of you're really just clones. You're not really human-esque, if you will. Like you're just meant to be a soldier.
That's good.
Yeah.
And we do get the origin of both those names. So Echo, we learn they start calling Echo to make fun of him because he repeats orders constantly. And then we learn that clone trooper CT 275555 doesn't like being called that, and he says, "Call me Fives," which makes sense. And then we do meet clone trooper CT 782, who at the time does not have a nickname yet. And I did not get the other clone's designation, but he also does not have a nickname yet.
I actually looked into that because you could just see how they were acting all for themselves, not necessarily working as a cohesive unit. So the other
Domino Squad. Sorry,
I thought there was one more that had a nickname though. I think it was called Droid Bait.
Well, yeah, so you had CT 4040, and we'll get his name later on, and then the other one, to Tom's point, CT-00-2010, who is also known as Droid Bait. So it seems like he was the first casualty, and I guess that's how he's got his name through the training scenarios. He seems like he's the first one that's killed off pretty quickly.
Now, did they mention that in this episode, or no? We don't hear his name.
I think you heard a slight.
There might have been like one drop, and I don't know how. I mean, I'll have to watch it again and see how he got the nickname. But yeah, I think there was only one time that his nickname of Droid Bait was referenced.
Okay, so we do get all their names in this episode because it's Domino Squad is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously they don't work as a cohesive unit. They fail the test. And then you get the kind of that real difference between Master Chief Brick, who's just kind of, he says you might as well just send them down with 99 and the other rejects. And at this point, we don't understand exactly what that means. And then he does refer to them as bad batchers, which we know that term will come back in a future Star Wars spinoff called the Bad Batch, which again, always can't wait to get to some of the other stuff. But we soon learn of another clone who is in fact a Bad Batch clone who was clearly created with defaults. He kind of looks much older, so it looks like he probably aged a lot quicker. And he's kind of hunched over and smaller, and that is clone 99. So we do get introduced to him, who seems to be where he basically is working as a janitor for Camino.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, like I said, I think that could be a possible end result of them trying to stretch the DNA, and he was unfortunately one of those clones that ended up, being affected by it.
Yep. So we do get I'll just drop them because it's not super relevant, but we do get some introductions to Bravo Squad, which is a more efficient squad. And then we meet Commander Colt from the Rancor Battalion, who comes back to see how the troopers are being trained so they can move on. And that's when they witness the training variable, the Citadel training, which was variable 1138. So we do have another reference of 1138.
Citadel Challenge THX variable 1138. Yeah.
So now per my tallies, that is now the second mention of 1138 chronologically. A reminder: the first one was the name of a droid in Phantom, so we have it yet again. So that's kind of fun. And then we get a weird interaction between. Well, I guess it's not that weird because that's how we get our clone trooper. Is it CT 400?
4040, yeah.
4040. We have him interacting with Brick. And anybody want to go by talk about how that goes?
Well, let's just run it back for a second. I was going to say, well, first of all, this is the first time we hear about a thing called an ARC Trooper.
It's true too.
And then if you remember Commander Colt and the other two commanders, they're different colors, red, blue, and yellow. But notice their helmets.
Yeah.
They're completely different from the standard clone trooper helmet. That's just looks like a Mandalorian visor. It's more towards the episode 3 or later down the road of Clone Wars helmets. They're completely different.
Okay. Yeah, I think there was a reference to ARC Troopers in Attack of the Clones because, like, I thought one of the troopers was like, "Oh yeah, I've got," or maybe it was like Commandos, but I thought they were referencing like a squad that was ready to fight along with Mace Windu. I'll have to double check that. But I thought they mentioned either ARC Troopers or Commandos. I'll have to double check it. But yeah, no, it was definitely interesting. Yeah, that the helmet design was a lot different with them. They had like shoulder pads and they were more rugged compared to like the basic clone trooper units. But going with that encounter with CT 4040, I guess Brick had summoned him, and he's like trying to talk some crap into him, push him around, see if he would break and fight back, but he didn't do it. And just when he got the punch, that's when he came up with this nickname. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm cut up," and he's just laughing it off. And then you have Master Chief like saying, "Oh well, you're going to be a failure, going back to maintenance." So you definitely see the contrast between these two bounty hunters, where Brick's more like he wants to challenge them more. He's very hard on them, whereas the other one, Ellis, he's more like, "Oh, you gotta have faith in them, you gotta trust them to see this through." And then I think we also had during that exchange too, I think we had maybe Fives and Echo who were like, "Oh, we want to approach Shock T and get transferred to another squad," because I think they referenced Bravo Squad just based on the way they performed in their training scenario. And you see like different perspectives on it. With Shock T's like, "Well, you need to work together, you need to work as a group, you can't focus on yourself." So you definitely see different perspectives when you have each of these clones going to different people, whether it's 99, Shock T, or Brick. So
well, and I want to hop onto that because Shock T says it, not to them, but I think maybe a little bit before. And this was my quote that really stuck out because I think it is going to become more and more relevant. I think it's something we've already kind of discussed a couple times in past episodes. But Shock T says, with regards to, I believe, in response to the cloner, I didn't write down her name. Tom, you had her name. The
Lama Sue.
Lama Sue, thank you. Lama Sue basically says, "Well, they're probably almost, I believe she says, she doesn't say bad batch, but she basically, as you mentioned, talks about the defective DNA, that it's kind of been stretched a little bit. And Shock T says they're living beings, not objects. So we do get one of the first kind of references, like, hey, these are living beings. They're not just, throw them in the scrap and get new ones. Like, they're not droids. So we do get that mentioned, and not just mentioned, but mentioned by a Jedi, which I think is important. So I thought that was interesting. That we finally get to see that, and then it kind of goes into a little bit later, where we get the final naming of CT-782 while looks like he's trying to go AWOL. And he gets encountered by 99, who gives him the nickname Heavy because he likes his heavy machine gun, I guess, and feels like he has to do all the heavy lifting. But we get a very nice kind of like speech from 99 to Heavy, basically, and Heavy uses the term again. He actually refers to 99 as the Bad Batch. So it does get said again. But yeah, 99 kind of does like a little like game time pep talk and talking
You
about how,
wanna talk this that was gonna be my hot take. It was like
go ahead.
his wisdom pretty much helped save Domino Squad, because if he just accepted he was a failure, even though he kept saying it's like, how can I be a failure without even getting a chance, because this is how I was created. Like, I didn't get a shot. You still have a shot. Because there's, I think, another thing to this episode. I think there's a theme towards it. It's about, wisdom can help out a lot of people. You gotta to find, to succeed, you gotta find wisdom in others. And second chances, you got to make the most of them. And with 99 saying to Heavy, how can I be a failure when like I said, how can I be a failure when I didn't get a chance? This is what really brings light to Heavy. He's just realizing it's like, that's very true. You're not a bad batch. You're not a bad failure, because you never really got your chance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean it was enough to not just that, but kind of motivate him. It seemed like it was. I think, Mike, kind of how you said it. You kind of have all these different point of views, and it's kind of funny. Each individual thing that happens basically pushes this team to come back together, right, and actually be successful. You have Cut Up, who is told by Brick, "You're the reason the team's failing. You can't take anything seriously. You're a jokester." And he hits it, and assuming provokes him, hoping that he'll hit him, and then he can like get kicked out or whatever they do to clones if they, or throw him in a brig, and then he's out of the squad. You have Fives and Echo, who I'm so happy we finally get. My boy Echo. And then we'll see plenty more of Echo. But you get Fives and Echo who get, basically told, hey, they're your team. And she says you're exactly where you're supposed to be when they try to leave. So that pushes them to be like, okay, well, this is where we're supposed to be. We need to work as a team. And then you get Heavy, who's basically like, I'm done with this team. I'm leaving. But then he gets somebody that can't do the heavy lifting, but instead, as you said, Tom, hits him with that wisdom. And it gets him to kind of rethink, how to look at the team. And yeah, it pushes them all together. And it's a combination of, Brick being a jerk and LS having faith and Shock T being just wise enough to know that they're exactly where they need to be.
Yeah, and we really see that cohesion in the final round, and they're not screaming at one another, calling out flanks, so you really see them acting more as a cohesive unit in the final round. And then we see them approaching the Citadel. And one of the things that we saw with Bravo Squad is that they use ascension cables, and then this time they're like, oh, we should climb it. And then it's like, oh, wait, they're not on our belts. What's going on here? And then find out Brick the trickster was, he was responsible for that.
Sabotage.
And and you would think that Shock T would condone him for that, but she's like, yeah, you know what? The enemy's not going to fight fairly, and let's see how they adapt to this. And because you would think that she would go along with LS, because like at the beginning of the episode, she was more sympathizing with him, but then you see her siding with Bricks. Like, yeah, it's like, let's see how they do with this and how well they adapt to the situation. So,
I
Well,
think
that's the question now. Did she know? Did she just know that they were going to succeed? She's a Jedi, right? Like, how much, yeah, did she have the feeling? Because she said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. They're people, they're human, or they're living beings. They're not objects. Like, did
I'd
she,
say she had faith, but she probably wouldn't know how they would have done it because, like, I think, like between all the things that we've been talking about, the different perspectives and the attitudes, I think she had faith that she would do it, but how they did it, I don't think she would know how to. She probably would expect them to do something similar because even she was like, wait, why did you get rid of the ascension cables? And when Brick talked, it's like, yeah, he's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a dose of reality too for like when Shakti says, the enemy's not going to play fair, because this is a reality that LS needs to realize is like once you send these troopers away from Camino, the training facility, once they graduate, they're going to be fighting a real battle. They're not going against program droids that they just constantly see every day. It's going to be much more violent, and like she said, the enemy's not going to play fair. So to Brick's point, and I guess he wasn't trying to. Maybe he was trying to fail him. I don't know, but he brought out a good point to LS, because I think the two of them had different styles of how they trained. Brick was more like hard nosed, like try to beat you until you get it right, and LS has just been trying to be compassionate, but in the end, it's pretty much it's a dose of reality for LS, where you just realize, like, yeah, it's
I wonder how much of it was Brick actually meaning to be a good kind of tough teacher, or because I forget we do have that conversation at one point between LS and Brick, where basically LS just says he's disappointed that Brick only sees this as a paycheck, and he's just there to get paid. And it seems like obviously LS even says that he is there for more reason. He's there for another reason, and it is to hopefully move them forward. But you're right. I mean, definitely them together, they're two styles, whether his was purposeful or he was just trying to make them fail, and that's why he stole which is why, let's be honest, he didn't take those things thinking they'll overcome it. He took the grab because he just didn't like them and was like, it's time to just finally have them be done and we can get rid of them. Because I feel like you can see it on his face too when
like he's giving up. Yeah, it's
kind of like, oh, he's kind of like, he's like, yeah, that's why I did it, but that's not. I don't think so. I don't think Brick's a good guy. That's my hot take. Anything else? Mike, I don't know if did we get an official deep dive?
Well, I mean, I guess it's just hard with these episodes being like very short and stuff. I mean, the THX 113 was definitely going to be one I was going to call out if you didn't say it earlier.
Yeah, sorry, I caught it. I'm trying. I was like, as soon as I hear a number, I flip back to where I wrote it down. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so I'll have to probably think of something else instead of doing deep dives, unless there's something you guys didn't catch. So I mean,
I don't
yeah,
know.
we
I
see
didn't
that.
really. Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, and like just to wrap it up, just like after they realize they didn't have the ascension cables, they come up with a different plan, take out the cannons, climb on top of them, they get the flag, and then all is good. So, and I think they said it was like that was the most. Yeah, I think they exhibited a lot of ingenuity. I think that's how they described it. So with the fact that they got very creative with that, that impressed everyone, including Brick, who was the tough guy between him and LS. But yep, very good episode overall. And then
I want to say this, though. At the end where you see him graduate and they all start lining into the Star Cruiser, did you hear the music at the end?
Yes. Okay, that's what I was just going to bring up too. It reminded me of Band of Brothers.
I was about to say,
dude, and I know I talked about that in an earlier episode too. I heard it and I was like them marching off onto the ship to go to war. Basically, it totally reminded me of Band of Brothers. And that's
like
what
I
I was
heard
going to
it,
say,
and
Mike. I don't know if you have
I
a
was
deep
thinking
dive.
about Band of Brothers because I remember not too long ago I was watching one of the episodes. I think it was after Bastogne, and you just hear the music playing, and you hear, "Oh, there goes Easy Company."
Yeah,
I was like,
it
"Yo,
seemed very similar, and it was very nice. It was very nice music of the orchestra.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. That was
Yeah,
good.
that's so funny, Tom. That's what I was about to say. I was like,
oh man,
that was the one thing I caught. Very fun. All right. Anybody got anything else?
It was also nice to see Heavy repay 99 with the medal at the end. Like, oh, it's all. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here today. So I thought that was very nice.
It tugged at the heartstrings a little. I got a little choked up, just a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, you got unofficial 6th member of Domino Squad now, which is 99. So definitely a great addition to the group. And like we talked about, he definitely has that wisdom and gives them that inspiration to keep going. So,
and as Heavy said, I'm sure we'll see you again.
Yeah. And he says, "Yep, you deserve it. You're one of us."
There you
Yeah,
go.
I'm gonna start
Brothers
crying.
in arms or brothers in life, even though they really haven't taken up arms yet. I mean, I guess they did against training, but
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how war treats them. All right, Mike.
Well, it's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, for joining Three Simple Men, making their way across the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, subscribe, and tune in next week as we do another season 3, episode 3, supply lines. May the force be with you always.